Welcome to this homeless training. I'm Carl Hetler, coordinator of homeless outreach for the city of South Bend, and we're glad to have Detective Stephanie Northcutt from our South Bend Police Department, who's a part of the Major Crimes Division, with us for our conversation this morning. Good morning, Stephanie.
Good morning, Carl. Good morning, everyone.
The first question I have for you, Stephanie, is why don't you tell us a little bit about your role and the kind of things that you handle for the police department in our city?
Yeah, so I'm a detective with our Major Crimes Division. What that covers is basically like assaults, batteries, stuff like that, burglaries, anything where there's an injury that's not related to a shooting. I also coordinate the downtown South Bend patrols off duty part time. I work as a liaison for between DTSB and our police department. I've been with the department about 10 years. I assist with our wellness program in house for our officers. I'm also crisis intervention trained, amongst other laundry list of items.
Great. One of the questions that we have this morning is how do police determine when someone needs to go to a different location, whether that's the crisis center, the hospital, or the jail?
Yeah, so each one of those is going to be a case by case basis. Obviously, our goal is always to get somebody help. We don't ever want to see somebody go to jail. Unfortunately, sometimes that does become what the option is. So it's going to depend on that independent person and what the call is and how they're responding and where we can build rapport and make ground with that person as to what our next steps are.
Yeah, what are some of the things you look for to determine, like, if someone needs to go to the crisis center? What are some of the things someone might say or actions, behaviors they might have that would suggest that that's the best location for them?
The big things that we look for with a crisis center or hospital situation would be whether or not they're making suicide or homicidal comments, if they're considered a danger to themselves, like if they're high on drugs or they're so heavily intoxicated that, say they're in traffic and we just need to get them out of traffic, but they want to stay in the street. Obviously, that's a dangerous situation for them. So it's varied on what their behavior is and what kind of level that we can say, yeah, they're not willing to cooperate to do what's in their best interest to keep them safe or to keep the public safe.
Sure. Can you give us a general example without any confidential information of a successful time when you're able to ascertain what someone needed and get them to the crisis center, for example, to get them care and treatment?
Yeah, we've actually I've worked quite a few. I haven't been on the street since May of last year, but I was involved heavily prior to that. I can recall an incident where we had a female that she was actually trying to cut her own throat, and she did have a weapon, and we were able to subdue her and essentially get her assistance. So it's the doctor said that the measures that we took actually saved this individual's life. So I view that as a huge success on our part.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for your work. That's a great example of that. Um, how have you found working with the crisis center and the staff there? Has it been something that has been uh, has improved? I know you've been off the streets for the past year, but has it been improving? What you hear from officers, their relationship working with the crisis center, especially as they've expanded hours?
Yeah, it's improved drastically, even in my time that I was on the street. When it was very minimal hours, it was obviously difficult to get a hold of people by no fault of their own. But with the extension, they are a lot more responsive. Seems like their time is a lot faster. Where it used to be somebody could be there in an hour or so, now we're estimating like 15, 20 minutes. It's also very helpful. Some people just simply don't respond to a police officer because they're in uniform. And so having an individual that can come out and speak with them and kind of level with them that doesn't look as quite quote unquote intimidating has been a world of good for us.
That's great. I know from your DTSB reports that you supervise that they often encounter unhoused individuals in businesses and public areas at nighttime and late at night. Can you give a little summary about some of the interactions your officers are seeing and how they address those and handle those?
Yeah, a lot of what we see is individuals either going into like hotels in their lobbies, just trying to warm up. Sometimes they do move into like open rooms and stuff like that, or they cause issues, which is becoming less and less frequent. I think with people knowing that we're out and about, we see a lot of people that seek shelter in the parking garages. Obviously, that's an easy spot to get out of the weather. Um, with our DTSB patrols, we have instituted like a zero tolerance policy. We don't allow anyone to hang out in the garage for any reason. Our goal is just to move someone along, and depending on the weather, if we can refer them to resources, whether it be amnesty or I'm sorry, weather amnesty or something like that, then our officers are quick to do that and get them to some place where it's safe rather than just hanging out in a parking garage.
Right. I think one example from this winter that stands out to me is when some officers, out of their own pay, put a woman in a hotel room because it was extremely cold and she couldn't go down to the center. And so I think there's even examples where they're going above and beyond to make sure people are safe and have a place to stay for the night.
Yeah, and we've had other officers that have assisted with buying like a transpo ticket. We had one female that she was actually a mute person and couldn't communicate other than writing anything down. So our officers put their money together and got her transpo ticket because she was from Indianapolis and was really just trying to get home and was getting frustrated and being deemed as a problem by businesses because of her lack of communication ability, where our officers took the time to slow down and write notes back and forth with her and get her identification and figure out what the issue was, and then we were able to get her back to her family.
That's great. Talk a little bit about some of the de-escalation training that you've received and that other officers you work through go through to prepare them for interacting with people who maybe, like you've talked about, are on a substance or are having a mental health crisis.
Yeah, so it's now part of the state mandates that we go through de-escalation training, and a lot of that includes mental health awareness. Police officers, once you're done with the police academy, that's not the end of our training by any means. We're actually mandated so many hours annually, and the South Bend Police Department is fabulous about making sure that officers go above and beyond those hours. Through our department, I've done tons of crisis intervention training. I've done a lot of like peer-to-peer support, and that does deal with like a lot of the mental health issues, ranging from like autism and stuff like that, because a lot of officers have never dealt with an individual who's had autism until they come out and they work the job. We've also gone countywide with our crisis intervention team, and this past year they were actually awarded like I think it's called the Gold Star Award, for the expansions and the training that we've done here.
Yeah, there's been a lot of recognition for all that training that is happening, not just for city, like you mentioned, but other county departments also. You mentioned autism as one example. What would be another category of people that you've gotten some specialized training on that have helped be able to improve how you interact with the public?
We deal a lot with like suicidal parties. Obviously, since like COVID, it seems like suicides have gone up drastically, and so that's been a huge portion of our training as well, is just to how to deal with somebody that they feel like they're in the end point and they have no other resort other than to take their own life. That's a huge portion of our training.
Yeah. What would you say would be things for us? We're all on this call from social service agencies and those watching the video later, maybe the wider public. What would you say would be some things to look for someone that would be signs that they are suicidal and that they need additional assistance? It's more than just having a bad day or feeling down.
Yeah, we always just tell people just to check in, be a good friend. Obviously, if you know somebody's going through a rough time, you don't want to treat them differently by any means. But it's not a bad thing just to check in a little extra. Suicide can be tricky because there are people that really do want help and they're very vocal about that, and they'll call police and tell us what's going on. And then there's other situations where we've spoken with families and they just have no idea. So the important thing is just to be a good friend and to check in on your people and to know kind of what's going on in their lives. And if you do know that somebody's being down, we always tell them just pry a little bit, be a little bit annoying until they tell you like, hey, I don't want you around, or I'm fine, I don't want the assistance, kind of thing. But definitely just keeping up with people is the big thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I had an encounter last year with, because one of the things I look for, I know, is also does someone have a plan and a means to actually do something to harm themselves. You gave the example earlier about a woman with a weapon who wanted to cut her own throat. I encountered a woman on the LaSalle Street Bridge that was sitting on the edge, ready to jump. And so she clearly had intention and plans and means to do it. And so thankfully, we were able to, with some other passerbyers, able to talk to her, converse with her. And then when police came, they were able to help convince her to come down and decide where she wanted to go. And it was great that we had options. She didn't want to go to Oak Lawn because she'd had bad experiences there, but she was willing to go to Epworth and then, or the hospital first and then Epworth. And so the police did a great job of helping make sure she stayed safe and transporting her to where she could get care. And so that is definitely an increased need that we're seeing in society today. Any
That's
other?
actually an important point that you bring up too. That's one of the main things that we're very upfront. We don't mince words, and we found that very successful through our trainings. If you feel that somebody is suicidal, we just ask them, "Are you feeling suicidal?" And then that does lead into the conversation. If they do have a means or something in mind that they've worked out, some type of plan, we found that more times than not, people that are willing to admit that are also willing to go get the help they need.
Yep. And you're not going to encourage someone who's not thinking about it by asking if they feel suicidal. So you're not planting the seed in their head. That's another
Correct.
common myth that we work to address. And I know there's upcoming later this year a walk out of darkness. You can Google that. I believe it's in September at Howard Park, where there'll be a big event focusing on suicide prevention. We have a strong chapter here that helps address that. We've talked about autism. I know there's communication boards that different departments have to help with autism. We've talked about suicide and ways to check in and to get people resources. Any other topics that you think have been really helpful through the CIT training that you and your staff have received that have helped you address mental health challenges in our community?
I think just the experience. We've come a long way with our trainings. Like I mentioned, some people simply don't want to talk to us because we are in uniform, but I've seen a lot more people willing to, because our officers are coming off more approachable, even if they do have a vest and all that good stuff on that shows that they're an authoritative figure. They're able to change their tone, their approach, and build a rapport. And that's been one of the biggest things I've seen with the training is as a police officer, you're assigned multiple different tasks. You're not just a police officer. You are a mental health specialist. Sometimes you're a mom to people. Sometimes you're just a good friend. And our officers have found other ways to approach people to have just genuine, caring conversation, so people know that, hey, it's not just somebody looking to take me to jail. It's somebody that does want to help me out and want me to be part of the community in a productive way.
That's a big difference. And it's stressful work though, because you never know what's going to happen and how things might go sideways. What do you do for self-care? That's another topic that we've talked about, is because we're all in very trauma aware situations and dealing with people in crisis. How do you take care of yourself, given this important work that demands so much of you, not just the formal work, but that rapport building that you're talking about?
Yeah, so for myself, my important thing is like when my day is done, I try to leave work at work. I know that when I return at 7 o'clock the next morning, it's definitely still going to be here. I focus a lot on my family. I focus a lot on like my own health and making sure that I'm in the gym every day and, just taking time away from this job and really focusing on something that is not police related.
That's great. Helpful tips for us all. Thank you. What else do you want agencies to know about your police work? What are some things, either misconceptions or things that we're not aware of, that go on with the work that you do as a part of the department?
I think just the big thing with policing is just knowing that times have changed. Obviously there's always going to be a light on every profession for things that have gone negatively, but our we've come bounds from what people think of police work years ago, and that's we have a younger generation of officers. They're more willing to get out. They're more willing to get involved. They want to be educated. They want to know what's going on in their community, and our police department as a whole, like I said, they are all about like making sure that we are getting the best training, going above and beyond. We've done a lot of work to make sure that our numbers are up, and just being out there and being visible so that people know that it's not just us responding to take you to jail, it's to be a productive member of community. I'm sure you guys have all seen, like, we have a tons of different outreach programs, whether it be through our department with like cookouts, and like different drives that we do. We did a hurricane drive this year. Each year our FOP does a Christmas program. So it's the days of just, oh, that's the cop. Like, we don't deal with the police unless something's bad. Those days are gone. It's a lot more community environment.
Where I think about the Police Athletic League is another example that Sergeant Heron is doing with different sports and different summer camps. I know that police will help with also are part of that also. Yeah, that community involvement.
Yeah, and our SROs, they're out all summer with kids with those programs. They're out in Howard Park during the summer. Like, they do great. I know I saw a huge difference last year with Howard Park alone, just having the SROs out there interacting with those kids because they all know them. They see them out throughout the year, so it's a comfortable, friendly, familiar face, and we saw a lot of changes in Howard Park for the better.
We're recording this March 19th, 2025, and I know issues from over the decade ago are back in the news. And so it's important to highlight some of the changes that have come and the things that have improved over the past decade. How are some other ways that the police are interacting with community? Are there any other examples that you can think of?
Our DTSB patrol has been a profound impact, I think. We've been doing that for about 4 years now, and we actually do the same thing at the Eddy Street Commons. It's just officers going in and out of businesses, just making those valuable contacts with not only business owners but patrons, and just they're seeing us down there. They know that things are safe. They know that things are secure, and then they're getting to know the normal faces, so that when something is wrong, they're comfortable telling that officer, hey, Stephanie, I saw this occur, and we want to make sure that it gets better before it gets worse.
Absolutely. We're talking about some of the changes you see in the police force. What are some of the changes that you've seen in the unhoused community over the past couple of years? How have their needs or the demographics changed in the unhoused community?
I think just with the economy, it seems like it's grown a lot. It seems like there's been a huge increase in those that need services, and that those are who are out and about just because they simply have no other options or resources.
So it's not just mental health or substance use, but there's more economic factors you've seen that are increasing the number of people who have lost their housing.
I think it's a combination of everything. I mean, obviously, we do see a lot more with the drug use and stuff like that, unfortunately. But yeah, I think it's just a combination of everything.
How does that impact then the work that you're doing if you're realizing that there's more people, for example, who are tenting because they lost their home or they're sleeping in their car? How does that change the police approach when they're working or coming up to someone who needs assistance?
So our goal is still to get them to resources that we know are available. You guys have been phenomenal with putting out those packets that let us know like what's going on for summer and spring and fall, and winter, especially winter, because that's where we obviously see a huge uptick in northern Indiana of people needing just some place to go stay so they're warm. So it has had a toll on what we do and what we're able to assist with, just because it seems like the numbers are greater than what the resources are available.
Yeah, takes us all working together. My final question is, what are some of the gaps in services that you see, given that we're doing a lot of great things together and the police are involved in the community? What are some of the gaps that we still need to find ways to address where people aren't getting the help that they need?
I think that the big thing is, like I said, it seems like we're almost short resources. So just finding something that can assist. A lot of what we've seen with the police work that we do and the people that we run into is that we have our regular South Bend natives. They know where to go. They know what the resources are available. They don't usually cause problems. And then every once in a while, we will see a bus come in, and in that bus is a bunch of people from other states. And it seems like that's where we're kind of at a gap. What do we do with these people? That some other town or city couldn't handle either, and now that's weighing down on what we have for options as well. So that's kind of our biggest problem is how do we help these new people? And in all honesty, those tend to be the people that also tend to cause issues that we've noticed, because they just don't know what the routine is. So once they're kind of directed someplace that they can go and they know that they're going to get some assistance, then we normally see that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. But I think we're just outnumbered on what we have to offer.
So would you think there's then state solutions then that need to happen to be able to address that so that other cities and towns can care for people that are in need?
I definitely think that everybody needs to handle their own population and, open up some more resources. But I understand that funding is always an issue and stuff like that. But
Any other gaps in services that you see even among the local population of our neighbors and those in our community for what assistance they need?
I think another big gap that I would mention would be kind of some assistance with the mental health that we see, because of the increase and need for mental health services. It almost seems like when we're referring people, we're doing it at such an alarming rate. We're also bogging down the hospital system or Epworth and stuff like that. I know that in cases that I've worked and people that I've talked to, they're months out from getting any type of assistance or seeing a counselor. And I don't think that's any fault of, Oaklawn or Epworth. I think it's just such an alarming rate and increase that they just don't have the hours in the day to meet with people like they'd like to.
Yeah, that is very true. I will share Oaklawn's mobile team has now expanded their hours to 24/7, 3 nights, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday night. They now are available around the clock to be deployed. The crisis center still is only 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. But at least 3 nights a week, they have now staff who are able to go throughout the county for anyone who's in a mental health crisis and needs that support and those resources and to make referrals from there. And so they are slowly making an expansion of services they can provide for people in a mental health crisis. And we hope to be able to expand that to 24/7 by the summer. But you're right,
That
there
would be
is
good.
still a gap.
Yeah, that would be great. That would be huge.
And we are working on that. I think one of the other things that we've talked about with mental health is the fact that group therapy has been the best way. Agencies have found that when they're short staffed to get someone in front of a therapist or a counselor a lot faster. And that one-to-one requires a delay and takes months. But by offering group therapy, it's a chance for people to get that immediate support. But that doesn't work for everyone. And so it's recognizing that there are still more needs that we have in the community. Um, Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Detective, for the time and for being a part of this conversation.
Yeah, happy to help. Thanks for having me.